Lesson 12, How Pharma Commercial Operations Uses Data. So what is commercial operations? Commercial operations is the group that focuses on sales and marketing of the products for the company. The usual teams that make up commercial operations are your brand teams responsible for all your individual products that are being promoted, your incentives compensation team, your targeting and alignment team, your sales operations team, which includes oversight of your regional directors, district managers, and sales associates, your sample operations team, which keeps track of all the samples, chain of custody, and then your marketing and direct-to-consumer marketing teams. These are often considered part of commercial ops. Other times they can fall under the customer, consumer, and or patient education bucket, depending upon how your pharma company is organized. The main goal of commercial operations is to educate their customers, the healthcare providers, on the efficacy of their brands, to educate their customers on how well their brand is and what it can provide in helping the patient, the end user of their product. Brand teams. The primary responsibility of the brand team is to ensure that their specific product is promoted by the field forces. Sales associates may have many products in their bag, so each individual brand team wants to be sure that their product is promoted fairly and often. Brand teams also want to help create call plans so their brand is positioned in the primary position as much as possible. As we discussed, when you have a call, you have a P1, P2, P3. So again, if your call is in the P1 position, it gets spoken about first by the associate. P2, it gets spoken about second. And we talked about the attention span of an HCP, a healthcare provider. So you want to have it in the P1 position as much as possible. But you have to understand that you're working with other brand teams as well, and they have products, and they want their product in the P1 position. You have to work with the other brand teams to coordinate a plan of action in hopes of detailing various products together to your healthcare providers. This will promote cost savings. So if you have healthcare providers that are of the same specialty group and they're being called on by different associates or the same associate, you want to make sure the brand teams work together on their combined message. You want to align with the incentives team to properly compensate the sales associates and drive sales through the compensation plan and incentive contests. And lastly, you want to ensure that the sales associates are properly trained to promote the product. They must promote on label only. They must detail to specific HCPs on the specialty list, on their target list, and they must follow all federal, state, and local ordinances and guidelines. Incentives compensation team. The incentives compensation team wants to set realistic goals for their sales associates. They want to publish these goals so everyone is able to set expectations. Being consistent with messaging to the sales forces so they can have confidence in the incentive plan. Once you put that incentive plan out for the incentive cycle, that's it. You should not be changing rules, should not be changing goals. That's what you have to stick to. Now, for an incentive contest, you can have them pop up during the cycle, but for your incentive cycle goals and your incentive cycle compensation, you must be consistent. You must run contests that are fair and adhere to best business practices. You have to avoid malice, libel, slander of competitor products. Make sure to adequately reward sales associates for meeting the desired goal. You can't set a goal, have a bunch of associates meet it, and then pull the rug from under them and say, well, we had too many associates meet that goal. We can't pay that out now. You have to make sure you're smart enough when you start the contest or incentive cycle that compensation is what you promise it to be. You need to work with the other commercial operations teams to align how sales associates will be measured. You have to work to define the incentive period, whether it's a quarter, whether it's a trimester, whatever you want that to be. You have to work with the brand teams to align to that. What works best with that type of brand? You have to understand what is the best methodology, quarter, trimester, for that specific brand. And you must communicate with the sales forces about how and when payments will be distributed. Samples team. The main responsibilities of the samples team are to ensure that the chain of custody is followed. You want to educate the sales associates on the proper distribution of samples to their customers, healthcare providers. You want to make sure there is a cost-benefit analysis with their sampling plan. If you oversample, you're going to reduce your sales. It's no good giving away $100 worth of samples if you're only going to get back $10 worth of sales. You need to monitor the amount of samples that have been issued to the sales associate, given to the HCP by the sales associate, and make sure that samples have been signed for within the customer relationship management system. This all goes back to chain of custody. Sales operations team. The sales ops team has to work with the brand teams to make sure the sales associates are properly trained. You need to devise the management structure of the sales forces for accountability and to push toward a predefined goal. The breakdown is different from company to company, but you usually have a brand vice president that's a vice president within the pharma company. You'll have regional directors report to the VP. You'll have area or district managers report to the regional directors. And then you'll have sales associates report to the DM or area managers. It varies from company to company depending upon how big the sales forces are, but that's usually how it's set up. And we're going to go into depth in that shortly when we have a slide explaining how all these things are tied together. The sales operations team must be sure that the desired quantity, targeting, and quality goals are met. Calls per day, the details per call, your reach and frequency of your HCPs, and the number of days associates spend in the field. Sales operations is usually included under commercial ops umbrella, but it is often run as an independent group. And again, we'll get into a whole chart on how these things are done in different companies. The targeting and alignment teams. They need to identify, target the proper customers, your healthcare providers, that need to be called on by sales associates. You need to assign the proper targets into the buckets delineated by how important they are, tiers, deciles, segments, etc. You need to align the targets into geographic regions to make sure that there is adequate coverage by the sales associates. You can align by zip code to territory mapping, MSA mapping. There's various ways to do it. By going through your algorithm, you will determine the number of sales associates and the number of field forces required to meet the coverage requested by the brand teams. You will work with the brand teams on the call plan so that products are represented in the primary, secondary, and other positions. And you'll work with the incentives team to make sure that the targeting plan and call plan align with the incentives goals. The marketing and DTC teams. The marketing teams are going to develop digital and physical promotional materials to assist the sales associates with their sales calls, with their presentations. It could be an iPad presentation. It could be a paper handout or a flyer. You need to help educate the consumer, the healthcare provider, about the product they are being asked to prescribe. You need to make sure that promotional materials are aligned with the indications that were approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Your materials should match what's on label. Your DTC, direct-to-consumer teams, are responsible for the creation of print and television advertising to promote the product directly to the end user, meaning the patient. The intent here is to have the patient discuss the product with their physician in hopes that the doctor will write the prescription of that product to the patient. Marketing and DTC teams can sometimes be in their own group, known as consumer or customer or patient education services, but they are often under the commercial ops umbrella as well. That is the end of lesson 12. There will now be a 10-question quiz.